our first Masterclass Singapore chapter webinar for our Smart in Spaces team. What we're going to be going through today is obviously the learnings and kind of the information that we've been seeing in the marketplace when it comes to the hybrid work environment. Obviously, we've spent basically the past few years traveling the world, right? Us and our team. And not only experiencing what customers are going through, but different teams are really implementing when it comes to their workplace environment. So what we're going to be going through today is really what and where different companies are making the change and how our team is really helping transition into a complete hybrid environment, right? It's safe to say that Smart in Spaces is definitely doing a lot to continue to innovate and push forward when it comes to the hybrid workplace environment as a whole. And some of the biggest parts of that innovation and pushing forward are joining us today on this call. So it's pretty exciting. We have a lot of knowledge to serve forward to our team. So we'll be joining us today. First and foremost, I want to give a proper introduction to Dinesh Malkani, which is our founder and CEO. Dinesh founded our company in 2017. In 5 years, Smart in Spaces has become one of the global leaders in digital workplace innovation. He has taken, clients. We have seen clients in over 30 countries and offices worldwide. Prior to Smart in Spaces, Dinesh actually was the president of Cisco India. And then, of course, as well as Jason McAloon, which is our Vice President of Global Sales with Smart in Spaces. He's one of the leading sales executives in the global hybrid space, right? He's been in the workplace software field for over 10 years and has implemented and worked with numerous of Fortune 500 companies. So, I mean, the information that these two gentlemen have is absolutely unmatched in this space. And of course, to introduce myself, I'll be the moderator today. My name is William Abreu, and I am the business development consultant here at Smart in Spaces. I've been with this team for 2 years. And honestly, today is going to be an amazing time, not only for everyone that's joining, but for myself as well, to continue to learn from two of the best in the industry. So I'm really excited to be able to hear what you guys have to say about what you're seeing in the market. And honestly, without further ado, Dinesh, I'll give you the platform to kind of give us a little bit more in depth of what you're seeing as we continue to drive this innovation into the space.
Okay, thank you very much, Willie, and thank you, Jason. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Today is the Singapore chapter. I'm right here on Orchard Road in our office, right, which is the living lab for hybrid working. So if you ever want to drop by, would love to host you all over here. Basically, today, we don't want to talk about our product, our technology. It's really a masterclass. I had an opportunity through COVID and basically over the last 3 or 4 months to try and drop by and visit a lot of the customers we have around the world, just to understand what's going on, what's working, what's not working, what are challenges that they're seeing. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about that. And obviously, Jason will also join me. And look, this is a sum total of, we looked at utilization data, we looked at what's happening in different markets. These are all the customers that we have. So what you will see is a sum total of global information. Obviously, being here in Singapore, I can kind of relate to what's also happening in the local market, right? So let me get started, right, about the key learnings that we've had. I think the first and most important learning is, as we talk to our customers and we look at our data, is, well, I know there's a struggle out there. I know that everybody wants people to come back. Employees are saying, that's great, but hold on a second, there's got to be a reason for me to be able to come back. And I think learning number one has been that employees want to work out of the office to collaborate and to build connections, right? And frankly, the data out here speaks volumes, right? Because basically one of the indicators is footfall, right? So you know how many people are going, right? How are they collaborating, right? And I think one of the interesting data points was that in January, this was a pretty low number. I mean, there were months last year it would go up and down, but today we're sitting in May, and this is just, this has gone completely crazy, right? Because the number of collaboration space bookings that we're seeing is up fourfold, which means not only are people coming back to work, I think one of the most important thing is that they are starting to place themselves in smaller collaboration spaces, meeting rooms, which means they're having discussions while they're coming back to work. We compare this with footfall and with desk utilization, and what we find is that the room utilization is probably, let's say if there are 1,000 people coming to your office, about 500 of them are booking spaces, which means they are meeting, they are collaborating, right? So there's definitely an upward trend there. I think another learning that we have is that, people, when they come back to work, we're starting to see how they are looking out for their colleagues. Before they make a booking or before they make a decision to come to work, the first thing is, they're checking, are my colleagues going to be at work on the same day? Many of them have started to nudge each other, right? Which is very cool. Let's say I'm coming in, but I want to know if Jason and maybe Mansi are going to be there in the office as well. I'll basically set it up in a way that, I'll keep getting these nudges, right? Which is at basically a high utilization. And, we've surveyed a lot of our customers and said, so what is the one thing that, people want to do? And they all agree that, checking and seeing if your customers are there, if your teammates or department people are there in the office, that is having a huge impact on why they're making decisions to be able to come back, right? The third learning we've had is really during the course of the pandemic, everybody's picked up hobbies and things like that. And they seem to correlate really well with similar people that have hobbies, because then they have conversations. So, we see the utilization on things like the cyclist group, and you'll see a lot of people jumping in and joining. Because I don't know about you guys, I mean, I picked up cycling. I go on the amazing kind of road network that's been built for bikes on the PCN in Singapore. But every time I come back to work, and if another colleague of mine says, hey, I've picked up biking as well, there you go, sparks a conversation. We start making plans of, hey, let's meet up on a Saturday or a Sunday, or how about on Wednesday evening at 5:00, maybe after we finish work, can we go down and bike for a couple of hours, go take a round around the East Coast and basically come back, right? So definitely having common interest is driving collaboration within the workplace, even though people are hybrid, right? And I think that helps them reconnect with the organization. So a lot of our clients have now started putting this in place. In the beginning, when we talked about it, was like, okay, but people are not meeting. Right now, they really are putting effort in this. They're creating, sort of reading club or book clubs or biking clubs or things around pets and things like that, because that certainly is helping and becoming a part of what the workplace offers, right? The other thing is for many of our clients, one of the learning was, and I visited one in Chicago where they have 5 floors, and what they wanted to try and do was they're only using a couple of floors because they want to show the density. They want to show that, people are kind of coming in and they want them to interact, even if it is just, if you guys bump into each other at the coffee place. Because when employees are starting to, okay, so now I've made a decision, I'm going to come to work because my other colleagues are there, they tend to prefer sitting closer to each other so that they can have that kind of discussion. I think at home, we're all sitting alone and working. And so, one learning and one statistic that we have seen improving is that whole desk near the teammate or near a neighborhood that has been created, right? Also, the other thing was just knowing where my colleagues are and finding them. Like, oh, I heard that Asha is coming in to the office, but where is Asha? Maybe she's sitting on the 3rd floor, but the ability to kind of do that is something that people value a lot, right? Also, another learning was on the experiences. So when we polled the employees within the organizations, they said that while they came back to meet their colleagues and to collaborate and, obviously kind of get back in the groove. But what was important was they wanted learning experiences. If I'm coming in, can I learn something? The ones who are new to the workplace, and I'm sure many of you would have hired extensively over the last couple of years, they want to learn from their managers, they want to learn from other senior people in the organization. So there has been a big emphasis on the whole learning experience. I know that a lot of workplace people have started to create learning zones. They will start to reconfigure the office, maybe put lesser desks, but also create learning zones where the frequency of face-to-face learning has just gone up, right? And that's another opportunity for employees to build connections with each other, because as they learn from the instructor, they also learn from each other. So this has really been lesson number one, that for most organizations this is becoming a big part of it. And if you think about it, right, it's a correlation between your workforce strategy and your workplace strategy. Because if you want to drive this, clearly what we've heard from our customers is you can't do that in isolation. As they have a workplace strategy, they are modifying the spaces to be able to encourage and be able to build those connections within their teams, right? Because it's becoming super critical for them to be able to do that. The second learning is, let's face it, guys, and all of us included, we all changed our lifestyle over the last few years. And now, the minute they hear, oh, I'm going to get back to work, oh, well, what does that mean to my lifestyle, right? Can I still try to keep up with it? And it was amazing because some of the customers that I visited, they had kind of plotted out, well, what are the lifestyle changes people have made? How can I make that available? Obviously, through a combination of technology, through a combination of the spaces that they have, for them to be able to continue on pursuing their lifestyle choices, right? On the last slide, I showed you how people join these interest groups, but also physical changes have been made in the workplace. Bike racks, because biking became such a big industry over the last few years, the ability to make sure that you have, when people are biking down, they have a place to park the bike. Many of them bought bikes that were like $8,000, $10,000, right? And so people are a little concerned, if I take it to work, then what's going to happen? So obviously making sure that there's parking space for that. Some have bought electric cars. I think it's a movement over the next 2 to 3 years in Singapore as well. We should see a lot of that coming through. So ensuring that you have figured out, well, if I'm coming in my electric car, how am I charging my car? But these are the little details that you have to spot inside of as you study your employees, but also make sure you have that available within your own organization. There are many launches we saw about the hybrid workplace and companies encouraging their people to work in hybrid, where they brought these things to bear and said, listen, we're also making changes on the hybrid, basically on the workplace, right? Many of the couples we observed, and this was interesting, many couples would sit down on a Sunday evening and decide, okay, so which days are you going to work, or, against which days am I going to work? Because now they have pets at home, or many had kids at home, right, during this period. And so being able to manage that became very important. So while they do that, I think the ability to plan their days back to work in a hybrid environment became very, very critical. That's where the negotiation at a family level happens on a Sunday evening, as they choose and plan the entire week out, right? But, ensuring that in your workplace or in your technology strategy, you give them the ability to do that so that they are much better planned as they have got responsibilities incremental to what they had before COVID, right? The second thing is about food choices at the workplace. A lot of people change their food habits, food styles. One complaint that I've been observing is, guys, we didn't spend all this money before the pandemic. We were just eating at home. And now we come back, and the ones working in CBDs are saying the food is expensive, right? What used to cost, a burger used to cost me like $8, and now it's gone up to 14. And that's a big jump. So how do I manage? So I think understanding that that is a concern and a problem, and pre-declaring the food choices, making sure the employees understand that, and then they plan themselves out a little bit better, I think becomes important. The other thing is, so some of our clients, they've gone and negotiated with gyms in the building or in the precinct, because let's face it, and even when I walk around in Singapore, I see everybody's become very fit and it's become a new fad, right? And so obviously they don't want to give that up, but the ability to think about that, negotiating these offers with gyms around and making that available to employees, and of course giving them all the visibility through technology, I think becomes a key part of what it is. The other thing is that, I for one really like the standing desk at home. So I would kind of stand many times and got used to it. But now when I'm back in the office, do I have the same thing? Where is it available? Can I search for a desk which has the ability for me to stand? That's one. The second habit that I think people picked up were these dual monitors. Many people we observed have dual monitors. And so when they come back to the office, they still want to have those dual monitors right there at their desk. So the ability then to find a desk that is standing and has dual monitors. But these are the things that made them productive over the last few years. I think it would be unfair to take it away from them. So I think as we have observed, a lot of companies are investing into this area about what changes to be made to suit the lifestyle, because it was clearly driving productivity, right? The third thing is, and this is interesting, right? One size does not fit all, right? And this was interesting because I actually visited one of our clients who they had done a really good job in mapping out groups of employees, right? So here's an example of Mandy, who's entry-level position. She lives in the city, so she's pretty close to the office, but then she's cramped in a smaller place with 3 roommates. They're all working from home, and there's a lot of noise and things like that, right? She loves to come back to work because it's a quieter environment. From a learning perspective, she's able to learn. Her thought process is, I want to be 4 days in the office, but I want that 1 day of flexibility. That's her ideal thought process, and she plans out the days that she wants to be back. And so you've got to think about Mandy and what she needs, right? But at the same time, this case, Maria, right? She is a senior level position. She lives in the outskirts of the city. So maybe she lives, somewhere, near Changi, and her office is in CBD. She has her own home office because they've got a 2 to 3 bedroom apartment, and she likes to come to office, but her sole purpose is, want to meet my team, want to have client meetings, that's it. The rest of the days I want to be at home. So 2 days in the office and 3 days. Now her needs are more around collaboration and sort of, making sure she probably drives to work, and so she needs a parking space. So her needs are very different from Mandy's, but you got to think about this group and category of people, right? The third is Mike, right? And Mike kind of is basically a single parent, has 2 kids, or maybe have pets, loves the whole concept of working from home, but also at the same time knows that has to show up and work basically at the office for a few days, right? Has a very fluctuating schedule. So ideal 1 day in the office, 4 days working from home because has got responsibility. So you need to think about your workforce. You need to be able to split it into different levels, but your workplace then has to cater to these different people, right? We're seeing the introduction of quiet zones. If you really think of Mandy, right, she's already used to so much noise at home. When she comes back, she probably wants to be in a quiet zone. Whereas Maria is kind of, okay, I get a break, I'm going to get out, but I want to meet my team, I want to have client meetings, and so wants to be out in the zone that you have got your rooms and things like that, right? And then, of course, Mike, who wants to touch down, but at the same time wants to kind of get the job done. The workplace strategy cannot be independent of you breaking it down. With the customers that we have worked, where they really were able to narrow this down to the minutest level and then match the the workplace, actually really have benefited, and they've seen better productivity for their teams. They have seen more satisfaction. and clearly they have utilized their spaces much better. Um, Look at it from an organization point of view, right? So we talked to our customers and said, so what's the reason you want your teams to come back, and what's your hybrid workplace strategy, right? It's really about a thriving culture. I think the belief of the organizations is clearly that when people are coming in, we want to make sure that we have in-person events. My colleague Varun, who's probably also joined, who's talking about a customer who organizes a whole bunch of events every week, especially around learning, because that's the one thing which brings people back. They want to, everybody's hungry to learn. Maybe free food doesn't cut it anymore. That was like the first thing. Hey, free lunch, come over, guys, or happy hours on a Friday evening. I think it's about learning opportunities, right? And organizing more and more of those. In-person town halls, when the CEO of the company or your head of the business does town hall meetings, but then how does everybody know about it, right? And do you want to invite everybody? Do you only want to invite a group of people? How do you want to communicate that back? People don't do a lot of emails these days, right? So is there a different way people know about it and they actually encourage themselves to come in to actually attend those town hall meetings, right? The other thing is surveys and feedback. There's nothing as, too many surveys. I think that at this point in time, learning, and that learning's changing every week. When they read the newspaper, their thinking and their process about what they're thinking about also changes, right? So clearly, regularly doing those surveys, gathering the feedback becomes important. Uh, we've seen our customers in their workplace create zones for social engagements, uh, gaming areas, the ability to sort of have these mini tournaments and things like that. I think that makes a big difference. And for new employees, thinking about the fact that they've never worked in a workplace, in your workplace, but having these days, I visited one of the clients who had a regular like Wednesday where they said office tours every Wednesday. It's a meet and greet. Come in and start to catch up with different people. They walk them around the whole area, etc., etc. Remember one thing: it's what you do, but it's also what you don't do. And I think the one no that we gathered was that when teams came back and they saw vacant floors, that was a no, because they got the feeling like, why am I here, right? And it's not very productive to me. And the second is, if they're sitting in the office but all day long they're on video calls, then they lose the whole purpose of being back, right? That's why making sure that you connect them in the right manner, and if they are not connected, you force that connection through events and through learning opportunities. But that's a focus of a lot of companies, again, that requires workplace as well as strategies around the people basically side of it, right? I think the fifth learning was that, at the end of the day, all of these things we talked about, knowing who's coming back to work, all the looking at collaboration spaces, finding your colleagues, knowing what events are there, getting the nudges, etc., right? If you really think about it from a hybrid worker or somebody who's coming in 3 days a week, it can become a daunting task, right? And if they have too many things to juggle with, that led to a very poor experience, right? And we have got this feedback consistently that employees think this is toil, right? It's too much. Like, I have to do this on that solution. I have to go and fill this form, and I have to go and do some search on a calendar, and then it can be pretty mind-boggling, right? And then there's something else now I have for the booking of my locker, etc. So I think if you overwhelm them with technology, that has led to low adoption and actually pretty poor user experience, right? And many of them say that why has my life become difficult? My life was supposed to have become easier. Last few years I was at home, now I'm coming back, make my life easy, make me connected, and make me more productive, right? So I think you've got to I think one of the learnings was that bring it together. Even if it means extra work for you as an organization, bring it together, because if you bring it together and you plan, and look, you can't sort of solve this problem overnight, right? But you have to think of a absolutely frictionless, very easy, very connected, and a stress-free day at the office where everything is like, being recommended to them and it's all pretty well oiled and well connected, right? I think this was one of the most important things we learned in the surveys that we did from employees, right, from their perspective. And this was also the learning that our customers gave us why adoption was low. Now, there are many things they're doing to drive higher adoption. I think the nudges is proving to be a big success. When you nudge people, when you give them recommendations, when you give them the ability to plan, they don't want to do this every day. So if you make it a daily habit, I think that's a little bit of a challenge as well. They probably want to do it, they want to think about the week, they want to think about the month, and we're starting to see the data, right? So we see the data that they use every day, but they also, it's interesting to see how they've already forward planned. A big percentage of the employees within our customers, they've already forward planned 2 to 3 weeks out. Which are the days I'm coming back to work? Do I have space? Do I have rooms? Well, they're registering for events. They're signing up for the training schedules that are there, etc., right? And I think that's really, that becomes very, very critical, right? So reduce toil, monitor and structure how long it is actually taking them to get the job done, right? I think the other learning was that there is no one workplace policy anymore. The workplace policy that was there in January is very different from what it was in March, is very different from what it is in May. So you need to be agile. But how can you be agile when you don't have data, right? So the first thing for you as you blueprint out your workplace strategy, and I visited a few clients who showed me their blueprints on what are all the data points that they are capturing, right? They had a very structured manner of, okay, who is hybrid, who is fully remote, who is basically, decided I'm back to work and, I've now sort of moved on, right? What's the footfall? Sentiment surveys by departments. Why are certain departments different from the other, right? How are your compliances around safety and things like that? Do you have wellness policies in place, and how is that tracking, right? Which events do people like to come for? Learning events? Do they like to come for comedy evenings? Do they like to come for food events? But I think tracking that data, because that data then helps you become very, very agile, right? And it's interesting to see how, like I asked a few clients, I said, so what's your workplace policy, right, on hybrid? And they were like, well, it depends which month you're talking about, right? And it changes. It's very, very agile. You need to be agile because this is something that hasn't settled down, right? And it's not going to settle down that quickly. Things will move up and down. You will put in certain policies in place, but you need to know, was that policy successful or not successful? We all know of stories of the big banks who said, got to be back on that day, and 30% resignations. Well, it's not that bad anymore, but at the same time, I think if you had the data, you'll be able to manage this. And again, one more learning was, it's not just about historical data. It's not knowing, well, what has happened so far. It's also, if you plan it well, to know about the future data. Like, how are people thinking about this? How are they planning? And how do all these dots get connected? We call them strategic insights, but I feel that this data is like worth its weight in gold, right? And if you can capture it in the easiest manner possible, quite frictionless, I think it's going to help you solve two things: your workplace policy, but also it will help you with what we think is massive consolidation that has happened. We've gone and looked at our client base, and it's interesting how if they had 30 offices, they only have 20 left right now. I would say an average 30% consolidation has happened. Maybe in certain dense areas, it may be less, but overall, they've tried to shrink it back up. And if they had 5 floors, they probably have 3 or 4 left now. If they had 3 buildings, they are considering only 2 buildings. So consolidation has happened. But how do you know what is your consolidation, whether it's working, or how much should you consolidate, right? So again, the data has become hugely critical, right? Where people are looking at, okay, what's my footfall? But footfall is not a determinant of the entire space you need. And this was a very interesting learning we had, right? And I wondered why. I thought that if you have footfall, you should know, right, what your utilization is. And people said no. Because a lot of people, remember I showed you the 3 personas, a lot of people were just coming in to have meetings. They were not going and utilizing desk areas, or they were coming in because there was a event that was organized. They would attend that and they would leave. So I think it's not just about footfall, right? The data people are using to be able to better plan their spaces and do a whole bunch of consolidation is basically footfall, but it's also about the utilization of individual assets. Is it that the lab areas or the client area or the rooms or the collaboration, what is being used more than the other? The worst thing you can do is, if you don't have the data, right, is I've got all these desks that are out there and I have fewer collab spaces, but it turns out the desks are never being used and collab spaces are not available. Frustrating experience, drops productivity. So with the data, many of our clients have been able to then reconfigure spaces. There's a lot of restacking going on right now. People are being moved from one zone to the other as companies are learning. I think space consolidation is happening. They're looking at trends, behaviors, and what they're also encouraging their employees to do is forward plan, right? Schedule yourself over the next 60, 90 days, because that gives organizations the data they need to plan the space out better, but also the facilities, right? Imagine having to, cook for or having meals available for 500 people, but only 35 showed up, right? That's not great. Or having 200 show up, but you only have meals for 50 people. So, those are all the things that I think we saw clients using in terms of just all the data elements and how they connect it together. And this bar graph here, by the way, this is all real data, and we have it for all the utilize. Just look at the way that it's going up, right? But every company is different, and that's why monitoring every individual entity or space becomes important. Some of the customers gave us feedback that when they reconfigured their space, they just did it on gut feel, right? For example, lockers, they just ran out of lockers, right? And a lot of people coming in were like, okay, I don't have that, that little drawer that I used to have anymore because we're working flexible, but I don't have a locker either. And that's frustrating because I want to leave some stuff behind, right? And so obviously you had to think about then how to manage that situation. But if they had the data, that would not become a problem, right? To be honest with you. So data across every entity became critical, right? And I think from a technology blueprint, right? So another learning was what is important. A lot of people say, yeah, I have a few of the elements, right? But what we did was we gathered everything that we have seen over the last, basically 3 years, and came up with a blueprint and said, okay, what are people really using? What is it out there that from their perspective, what is an ideal sort of technology, right? And I think it begins with the entry, right here, right? They were very focused on seamless entry, right? And at the entry point, making sure you understand footfalls, you understand visitors, you are able to count the people that are going in and out, right? Of course, everybody wants to continue with the good work that was done on making things contactless, very, very seamless, and doing the same experience for visitors. So this is a whole entry section that we think is a strategy by itself, right? Creation of these zones. A lot of companies did not have these zones where you had a cafeteria, you had a gaming area, you had a whole bunch of stuff. But I think ensuring that visibility of the availability of these things are technology driven. Otherwise, you'll find that you've either got too much space or too little space. But also analyzing what is happening in the zone, I think just gives you a perspective of what people like. Is it the pool table that drives the most traffic, or is it something else? What kind of food choices, etc. Right? So making sure that you've kind of covered this from a technology point of view. The other thing is the whole seating plan. In the world before COVID, it was one employee, one desk, and that's where things were being done. But in today's world, I walked you through those three personas that are there. There are probably about 7 personas in an organization, right? If you really start to bucket it out. Well, so your seating plans need to be thought through like that, right? And a lot of the customers, when they showed us, we see what they use. Their blueprints have zones, fixed areas, flexi areas, quiet zones. But the definition of the new floor plan has changed. And I think understanding that, making that available in a technology oriented manner becomes very, very important, right? So think of the whole um, seating areas, your kind of zones where you do certain activities, just the whole engagement space, and basically a lot of clients that we saw, basically they shut down their large meeting rooms. They had a few, but they started to cut that up, right? Can I have 2 seating desks or zones as opposed to basically a large meeting room? So reconfiguring that space because you're trying to drive adoption. But then, with it comes technology, right? Because I mean, one of our customers gave us an example. They have 4 floors and they created these pods. The problem is that even though the pods were created, if somebody on level 1 wanted to get a pod, the typical was they would run around looking for a pod and figure out, oh, all the ones on the first floor are taken. Then they would go to the second floor, and then they would go to the third floor. That's hard. And so when you think of reconfiguring your spaces, make sure that even though you don't want them the toil of booking and all that, I think it's very important they should know, is it available or not? Do I spend time running up and down trying to look for that area, or can I just have visibility of that either on a screen or on my phone or wherever you want to kind of put that, right? But that has become, from a technology point of view, basically a very important consideration. And last but not the least are these rooms, right? And making sure that you have the ability to obviously know what's available. And people have different choices. Some like Teams, some like Zoom, some like different kind of basically collaboration stuff. But making sure that you have catered to that inside of your rooms, and the ability to select that leveraging on technology. But I think what is also equally important, and in Singapore in particularly, we work with clients who have now come back and said air quality is very important, right? So we need an air quality strategy. We need a strategy around the BMS, because it does get cold in these rooms, and we've got to solve this once and for all, because people are very uncomfortable. They come into work and saying, when I was at home, I used to just turn off my remote. I would turn up and down the temperature. In today's day and age, why can't you solve that problem, right? And so obviously factoring that in becomes important. But imagine, right, at every stage, technology intervention can either make life difficult or it can make it very easy. If you charted out what is your experience you want to give to the employees, and then mapped it to the technology roadmap or the flow or the journey, I think that's what makes it absolutely seamless. We visited basically one of the buildings that we had done, where they've got many floors, right from the time that an employee comes, the access entry, the parking, the ability to find colleagues, all the stuff. But all that has to come really, really nicely, essentially together. And look, this is a journey. So one of the recommendations or learnings we've had is, most of our customers we have seen have been going step by step, but they have a roadmap in place. They say, these are the things we're going to do first, and then we're going to add, and then we're going to add. And I think that's worked out well, because you can't overwhelm people by giving them everything on day one, right? That becomes a little bit of a challenge. But having that roadmap in place certainly does help. Also, what is important is that, one learning was that I basically employees don't want to have to grapple with too many things, right? So I think that whole, and today, in today's world, the good news is systems are open, right? Everybody has APIs, everybody has SDKs, and everybody's got all these different things, right? And so making sure that they have the ability, you have the ability from an experience point of view to even think of all these other tools that you have given them from a hybrid work perspective. It becomes very important to bring it together. I think that is key, right? Because if you can do that, look at it from the employee point of view, right? They're one-stop shop. They're able to do everything that is needed. And of course, everybody's vying for this right now. But I think there is a way to be able to solve it. We work with, certain companies that actually got their workplace, workforce, transportation, and all kind of options, offers, deals, and all kind of things that they were doing from an employee perspective together. And I think that's just driven up a different kind of experience that people were sort of looking at, right? So in summary, right, transitions are challenging. And this is probably from a workplace point of view, one of the biggest challenges or transitions that we are seeing the industry make. Change management is critical. You have to have a change management plan. And I think the more data you have, the more tools you have to be able to have that in place, that does make a huge difference because you can make the right decisions, right? Spending time understanding the employee needs, segregating them out, putting them into the right tools, making sure that all that is available, and then matching your workplace strategy around it becomes very, very critical. And then obviously, I feel that while we have the designers and people that are restacking spaces, you've got to have the technology that kind of comes in sync between physical space and physical person and remote person, right? The triangulation of that technology is really at the heart of it because I really feel that it can interconnect the three. Those were some of the learnings that we've had. Jason, would love for you to share some of your thoughts as well, what you're seeing in certain global markets before we open it up for questions.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Dinesh, for that. I think, you harped on everything we have learned over the past couple of years in this hybrid environment. And I think one of the biggest learnings that I've had from my workings with large companies is you have to look at the large company, especially if you're somebody that helps implement solutions for a large company. You have to look at a large company as multiple smaller companies within it. You look at some of our larger customers, each site is different. And I liked how Dinesh used the word journey. Every site has their own journey of what they see hybrid as being. So there's a site in Singapore that might say, we want people to have a top-down approach where managers are leading and telling people when to come to the office. That same company might have a site in the United States or in New York where it's employee preference. And really, I think the biggest learning that we can take from this hybrid world is the journey is long for hybrid. Many companies haven't fully defined their hybrid strategy, and that's when partners come in. Companies like Smart and Spaces are able to partner with you and to really help you through that journey, to help you define that process of how you guys will define your hybrid environment. And lastly, I loved how Dinesh again touched on that journey, but also you look at a hybrid environment needs to be flexible. It needs to have the ability to book those spaces, the ability to adjust a day with the drop of a dime. And when an employee-centric approach, which all these organizations have, I think in my polling of all my customers, I asked, what's the main reason why you're going after a hybrid solution? The main reason why all these large companies are putting effort and putting, infrastructure and people into place to create these hybrid environments is because they want to focus on the people of the organization. And the people are the biggest asset. We're diverse companies now, we're diverse organizations, and diverse organizations come problems of culture and bringing everybody together, and how do you make everybody part of the company? And I think the way you do that is flexibility. You want your environment and you want your buildings to be flexible, but you also want the solutions and the tools that you use to help with that flexibility. You want those solutions and tools to be just as flexible as your environment. And I think having a flexible tool like Smart in Spaces for your space and for your people management, for your engagement is the best way to help you with that journey to the future. And I appreciate Dinesh and all his learnings, and I think the combination of Dinesh's learnings and seeing what our customers are doing on a weekly basis and how their journeys have changed from our first conversation last year with Johnson and Johnson all the way up till our conversations with them now, where their journey has changed so dramatically. And I think that goes for every organization and every person that is looking for a hybrid solution. Your initial thoughts on hybrid have changed, and they're going to change. And I think us as a company with Dinesh and our team, we sit down every week and we discuss how we can better bring our customers the hybrid world that they're looking for. So again, Dinesh, I appreciate that presentation, and I hope to get some very good questions in the Q&A here, and we can answer anything that you guys might have, and we'd love to share anything that you guys want to learn.
Super. Thank you very much. And I think, Willie, we already have some questions that are coming in. Would love if you want to unmute also and kind of ask any questions. It's we didn't want to keep this big a group, so Willie, I'll hand back to you. Yeah.
Of course. I mean, I'm sure we've had a pretty good group, and they've been sustained through the entire presentation. I mean, it's obvious to see the knowledge that we have within our team, and especially you, Dinesh, presenting obviously all our findings through this workplace initiative, right? And one of the questions that we did get was a testament to the journey, right? Like Jason spoke about, was the journey of our clients in adopting such a technology, right? So if you don't mind, Jason, just a little bit more on the journey aspect of just from the day that we speak to a client to implementing a solution. What does that typical roadmap look like? Absolutely.
I mean, I think so. The journey, as we both said, is it changes. So if you look at how large organizations are adopting it, the initial conversation is usually starting off with the organization is looking for a way to bring people back to the office, and they really don't know the way that they're going to do it yet. And so they look out to different vendors. And I've talked to companies that are reaching out to multiple vendors just to kind of help build their kind of idea of what hybrid is. But I really think once they sit down and they have the conversation with us, it goes from, hey, I just wanted a booking to get people back in the office safely, to, wow, I didn't realize how much really goes into a hybrid workplace. And they see some of the features and some of the things that we've painstakingly worked to bring to them. And they see that, and they really kind of, like I said, that journey goes from a booking solution to employee engagement, to community engagement, to access control and integrations with Teams and Zoom. And if you look at that kind of journey, it really goes to, again, I go to this term all the time, it really goes to employee focused. The journey really starts on how do we better the employees coming to the office, and how do we better give them the information they need to use the office more practically.
Awesome. Well, now this question is for Dinesh. How can people actually see who's coming to work, since you mentioned everyone may not even book a desk? How can they actually go about doing that, Dinesh?
Yeah, I think, at the end of the day, there are many ways to do it, right? You don't want to track an employee. I don't think that's the right thing to do. There are a lot of privacy rules and things around it as well. I think, at the end of the day, I talked about planning. I feel that, one of the learnings with our customers was, I talked about the example of the couple, right, that sits on a Sunday and then tries to figure out, well, through technology, what you should encourage, or what our clients have been encouraging, is how do you schedule yourselves, right? And the scheduling is more for you to plan, but also give visibility of that to people that you are used to working with, right? So you nudge each other. Like, for example, if I want to I'm coming in tomorrow, and then I'm coming in on Tuesday next week and Thursday next week, how do I put my data in, right, inside of the software, and basically make sure it nudges like the 10 people that I usually work with, right? So they know that I'm going to be there on those days. And, once they know that I'm there on those days, once I come to the office, the system should tell me, yep, so and so's checked in, because, we all badge in and things like that. But those are the ways that you can do it. Of course, if you book, what desk has been booked. But, you've got a balance between privacy. And so a lot of people opt out. There should be options for an employee to say, no, I don't want anybody to know I'm at work today or when I'm coming in. And that's okay as well. But really a combination of the two, that's what helps usually in sort of ensuring that we have the ability to manage that situation.
Awesome. Thank you, Dinesh. And another question that we actually got was geared towards multiple bookings on similar days. So if you did book a desk and a meeting room and maybe an amenity as well, are you able to do all those things in the same day? Is that a possibility?
No, absolutely. Like I talked about the one journey, right? See, at the end of the day, it's very important that we don't lose sight of the fact that different employees have different needs, right? And so, when you think about your workplace, you've got to have provision for parking, and it's got to be different, for somebody who's taking an electric car versus somebody who's taking a normal car. You got to think about lockers, you got to think about desk rooms and collaboration spaces, but then you have to give them one unified experience to be able to identify, where are these, is it available for me or not, and if it is, can I go ahead and use it, right? I think those things become important as well. But yeah, absolutely, you should be able to book a desk room, collab space, locker, whatever it is, you should be able to do that. That's not a problem at all. Okay.
We actually got another question for Dinesh. How are companies managing vacant offices on Mondays and Fridays, and sporadic football or vacant office days?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I did talk about was engagement, right? While you're planning it out, remember, you have to encourage the movement back, right? It's not easy. It's not going to be easy. And so you got to think about things that you do on specific days where you do feel that your footfall is lower, right? So if your footfall is going to be lower on a Monday or on a Friday, then you've got to think about things and events that you organize, or meetings that you do, or office tours on those days, because that's what will get them back on those particular days. This is a global phenomenon, by the way, that Monday and Friday is a little bit, sort of, especially on a Friday after 3 o'clock, people start to kind of log off a little bit, right? But that's got to be part of the journey and your policy as you think about your hybrid world. Many companies, though, are also quite concerned about this, and so they are putting in some policies around that you've got to select either a Monday or a Friday. That's another way to be able to manage it. The first is to obviously draw them in, but at the same time, basically over time, for certain work functions that need to be on the ground, basically making sure that people pick at least one day, could be a Monday or a Friday.
Gotcha. So Dinesh, another question that we also received earlier was, you spoke about actually being able to come into the office for meetings and things of that nature. What about if there was a situation where there's somebody at home and somebody in a meeting in the office? Would they still be able to collaborate as well, even if they're not actually attending in person?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Willie, I think that's the whole meeting room experience, right? Where firstly, it should never be too cold. We believe that is that's always a deterrent, but also making sure that, I know of a lot of companies that part of the whole journey has been how do they have multiple screens and do things like that, so that the experience around a remote worker and one in the office becomes a really good one, right?
Awesome. Just we get these questions that just keep popping up, which is awesome, and we thank everybody that's viewing, obviously, to continue to ask questions. We have a few more minutes left, but another question was, you have talked about the employee experience. How can I help my workplace team to manage this fluid situation with so many data points? Thank you.
Yeah, I think, data is very, very important, right? We believe that as part of the journey, one of the things that customers do is they dig the data out from all these multiple systems and be able to connect the dots really, really well. Because creating that strategic dashboard with data coming in from different solutions becomes very important, right? Without it, you're just sort of flying in the dark, right? Because at the end of the day, you need to know what's happening to the different groups, the reactions to your policies, your utilization of spaces, your safety protocols, the engagement that is happening in workplaces, the events and who's attending, what type, personas. I think bringing that together on one single strategic dashboard, I think is worth its weight in gold, right? And it'll change every week. So as we see monitoring and utilization, it is changing almost on a weekly basis now. And it doesn't mean that because it worked in a particular way in April, it's going to work like that in May. I feel the next 3 months, you will see a little bit of consistency. That's at least what we're predicting. But, certainly being able to dig that out and making data-oriented decisions makes all of the difference, right?
Awesome. Well, this is the last question I think that we're going to have time for. But while hybrid is the way to go, but we have seen in many organizations technology adaptation by the employees falter. How do you ensure that employees stick to the solution and use it on a daily basis?
Well, I think you have to make it easy for them. Forcing people to do anything and making it hard is a no-no, right? You have to understand their needs. You got to make sure it's simple. And if anything, 1 or 2 clicks here and there, and it's got to be for the purpose that they use it for. Somebody says, oh, I'm going to force you to do this. Well, that's not the right way, right? It's what is the benefit if you did it? I think understanding that and connecting it well into the ecosystem and to their needs, I think is the only way that you're going to be able to make them adopt it. Because if they do, it's good for them, it's easier for them, it's more productive. You get all the data and information you need, you blend the two together. I think it's better for the organization, the employee, as well as their manager.
Wow. This was absolutely amazing, guys. So I just want to thank you guys for obviously joining on this first Masterclass Singapore edition. And I wanted to thank all the attendees for asking all these great questions and sitting through this amazing presentation. I mean, this is the best knowledge in the game right now. So it's really exciting to learn what you guys are seeing in this marketplace and in this hybrid world that we're leaning in towards. So I want to thank you guys again. And I mean, it was a pleasure, and I'm excited to be able to do this again soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Of course, guys. Take care. Have a great one.